A young waitress, driven by her strong personal beliefs, finds herself caught in a situation that will challenge everything she stands for. When she boldly refuses to serve a man wearing a MAGA hat, she unknowingly sets off a chain of events that leads to an unexpected revelation. As tension builds and the truth unfolds, one question remains. What happens when personal convictions collide with second chances? Stay tuned for a story filled with lessons on growth, humility, and redemption. It will take you through emotions you didn't expect and leave you questioning your own perspectives. If you enjoy heartwarming and thought-provoking stories, make sure to subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss what comes next. Thank you for supporting the channel, and there will be many interesting stories. Subscribe to the channel to receive the latest videos. Wish you happiness and peace. It was a bustling afternoon at a luxurious restaurant in the heart of the city, where patrons eagerly indulged in their meals. Elizabeth, a forthright and spirited waitress, took pride in her job and held strong opinions about the world around her. She believed firmly in standing up for her values, even in the workplace. When Daniel, a middle-aged man dressed in an impeccable suit and wearing a red MAGA hat, entered and chose a table, Elizabeth froze in place. That red hat caught her eye instantly, tightening her throat and twisting her stomach into knots. To her, it wasn't just a hat. It symbolized ideologies she found utterly unacceptable. Without hesitation, Elizabeth approached Daniel's table. Her notepad was clutched tightly in her hand, her fingers gripping it so hard they turned pale. "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like me to help you find another seat?" she asked, her voice clipped and strained. Daniel looked up, his calm gaze meeting her tense demeanor. "Actually, I'm quite comfortable here. May I have the menu, please?" His tone was composed, yet firm. Elizabeth's lips pressed into a thin line, and her palms began to sweat. "I'm sorry, sir, but I cannot serve you. You'll need to leave," she stated, her voice trembling slightly. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his tone remaining steady. "May I ask why?" Elizabeth hesitated, but held her ground. "Your hat! It represents values I cannot condone. I cannot serve someone wearing that." Leaning back in his chair, Daniel studied her, his expression unreadable. "Interesting. So, because of my hat, you've decided I don't deserve to be served here?" Elizabeth's chest rose and fell quickly, her breaths uneven. "I have the right to refuse service if I feel uncomfortable," she said, though her voice wavered. At that moment, Laura, the restaurant manager, noticed the tension and approached the table. "Is there a problem here?" Laura asked, her gaze shifting between Elizabeth and Daniel. Elizabeth quickly spoke up, trying to explain as her heart pounded. I told him I couldn't serve him. I don't feel comfortable." Laura frowned, her surprise evident. "And why is that, Elizabeth?" she asked, her tone firm. "The hat," Elizabeth said curtly, crossing her arms as if to shield herself. Laura turned to Daniel with a professional smile. "I deeply apologize, sir. Allow me to personally take your order." Daniel smiled politely, his voice steady. "Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll have the house special and a black coffee, please." As Laura walked away to place the order, Elizabeth stood rigid, her shoulders tense, her expression a mix of anger and frustration. She muttered under her breath before returning to serve other tables, though her irritation simmered beneath the surface. Daniel remained seated, silently observing the scene without further comment. When Laura returned with his meal, she addressed him with respect. "If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to let me know." Daniel nodded. "Thank you. It's rare to see someone handle a situation so professionally." Laura felt a flicker of embarrassment at his remark, but maintained her composure. "We strive to ensure every guest feels welcome," she replied with a composed smile. Daniel left the restaurant shortly afterward, leaving a generous tip for Laura. As he exited, Elizabeth cast a lingering glare his way, her dissatisfaction evident. She had no idea that Daniel was far from an ordinary customer, a truth that would soon upend her perspective and career. The next day, Daniel called Laura, his voice calm yet commanding. "However, I believe it's inappropriate for an employee to refuse service based on personal views," especially in a professional setting. Laura sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly as disappointment crept into her voice. Mr. Everett, I sincerely apologize for what happened. This is not how we operate. I'll address the matter immediately. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Thank you for your time, Laura, Daniel replied, his tone unwavering. Before ending the call, he added, One more thing you should know. I'm not just a customer. I am the owner of the Golden Horizon Cafe. Laura's breath hitched for a moment, audible even over the phone. You're the owner? Really? Yes, Daniel confirmed. I've been observing how the restaurant operates, and your actions yesterday were commendable. I'd like to meet with you and Emily this afternoon to address this issue. Laura quickly agreed, her voice betraying a mix of nervousness and resolve. Of course, Mr. Everett. I'll make arrangements for Emily to join us. That afternoon, Laura called Emily into her office. As Emily entered, she stood with her back straight, hands clenched, and eyes wary, as if already anticipating the subject of the meeting. Is this about yesterday? She asked, her tone sharp. It is, Laura said firmly, her gaze locking onto Emily's. I spoke with Mr. Everett, the guest you refused to serve. Emily crossed her arms, her palms pressing so tightly into her skin that her nails left marks. Listen, Laura, I stand by my decision. That hat represents things I can't support, and I believe I have the right to refuse service if I feel uncomfortable. Leaning forward, Laura's voice was calm yet commanding. You are entitled to your personal beliefs, Emily, but when you're at work, your job is to provide the best service to every customer, regardless of how they look or what their opinions are. Your actions go against the values of this restaurant. Emily opened her mouth to argue, but Laura raised a hand to silence her. There's something else you need to know. Mr. Everett is not just any customer. He's the owner of this restaurant. Emily's eyes widened, her complexion turning pale. The owner? She stammered, her voice faltering. Yes, Laura said, her tone unyielding. He didn't reveal his identity yesterday, but this morning he called to share his experience. He wants to meet with both of us. Emily felt her chest tighten, cold sweat running down her spine. He's the owner, and he wants to meet me? That's correct, Laura confirmed. He'll be here shortly. I suggest you prepare yourself for the discussion. When Daniel arrived, the atmosphere in the office grew tense. Laura greeted him with a polite smile and escorted him into the room where Emily was already seated. Emily stood rigidly, her hands gripping the edge of her chair, her gaze darting away. Daniel entered with a composed demeanor. His eyes scanned the room before settling on Emily. Good afternoon, he said, his voice neutral but sharp. Good afternoon, Mr. Everett, Laura replied. Emily muttered a barely audible greeting, her eyes still avoiding his. Daniel sat down, folding his hands on the table. Emily, I wanted to meet with you in person to discuss what happened yesterday. I'd like to understand your perspective. Emily hesitated, taking a deep breath. I felt uncomfortable serving you because of the hat you were wearing. It represents values I strongly disagree with, and I believed I had the right to refuse service. Daniel nodded, his expression contemplative. I see. And do you believe it's fair to judge someone solely based on an item of clothing they're wearing? Emily faltered, her hands gripping so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It's not just the item, it's what it represents. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I stand for? Daniel asked, his voice devoid of anger, but firm and persuasive. Emily stared at the table, visibly uneasy. No, I don't, she admitted. Daniel continued, his tone measured but weighted with significance. Emily, I respect your right to hold personal beliefs. However, in a professional environment, we must treat everyone with respect, regardless of differences. Your actions yesterday not only impacted me, but could also harm the reputation of this restaurant. Emily lowered her head, her voice so faint it was barely audible. I understand. Daniel took a deep breath, his composure unshaken. I've decided not to terminate your employment. However, I believe you need time to reflect on professionalism and respect. Starting today, you'll be on a 2-week suspension. Emily felt as though a part of her pride had been wounded. Seeking clarity, she called a few close friends and family members to share what had just happened. Each person had a different reaction. Her best friend, Sophia, who shared Emily's strong liberal views, was sympathetic. Over the phone, Sophia said, "I get it. It's hard to serve someone when you feel that what they stand for goes against your values. Honestly, I probably would have done the same thing." But her brother Jack, ever pragmatic, held a different opinion. During their call, his voice was firm and steady. "Emily, I understand what you're thinking, but at the end of the day, you're a waitress, not a protester. Your job is to serve customers, not to judge them. Honestly, refusing to serve someone, doesn't that contribute to the same intolerance you're trying to fight against?" Emily's face burned at her brother's words, her heart pounding faster. Yet she couldn't deny the truth in what he said. Later, she turned to her mother, a retired teacher known for her wisdom and patience. Her mother's voice was gentle, but filled with meaning. "Sweetheart, you have every right to hold on to your beliefs, but how you act on those beliefs matters deeply. Rarely does anyone learn or change through confrontation. Sometimes, the best way to make a difference is to lead with kindness and respect." Her mother's words lingered in Emily's mind. That evening, curiosity led her to search the name Daniel Harper on Google. She didn't know what she was expecting, but the results left her stunned. Articles flooded the screen, portraying a man who had worked tirelessly to grow Golden Horizon Cafe from a small family eatery into a thriving restaurant chain. She read stories about Daniel's compassionate leadership and his efforts to support the community, from providing jobs to struggling single parents to mentoring young people entering the workforce. As she scrolled through heartfelt testimonials from former employees, her hands trembled, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I had no idea he was like this," she murmured. Over the following nights, Emily lay in bed, restless. She couldn't ignore her strong political convictions or her frustrations with the state of the world. But she also couldn't overlook how those emotions had driven her to treat someone unfairly. One evening, amidst her turmoil, she sat down with a pen and paper and began to write a letter of apology. "Dear Mr. Everett, I want to sincerely apologize for how I treated you during your visit to Golden Horizon Cafe. My actions were unprofessional and unfair. I deeply regret allowing my personal feelings to interfere with my responsibilities as a waitress. I've since learned more about you and the work you've done, and I'm truly inspired by your kindness and generosity. You deserved better from me, and I'm profoundly sorry for my behavior. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect and grow. I hope that one day I can regain your respect. Sincerely, Emily." She stared at the letter for a long time, her heart pounding as she debated whether she had the courage to send it. She wondered if she even deserved forgiveness after what she had done. Meanwhile, Daniel discussed the situation with his close friend Ryan during a round of golf. Ryan, his voice tinged with surprise, asked, "Why didn't you just fire her? Most people wouldn't have thought twice." Daniel smiled faintly, his hand steady on the golf club as he lined up his shot. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," he replied. "We don't grow by cutting people off. We grow by helping them see a better way." Ryan raised an eyebrow, chuckling wryly. "Still, it couldn't have been easy to stay calm." Daniel nodded, his tone reflective. "It wasn't easy, but I've been in her shoes, quick to judge, blinded by my own perspective. Someone once gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it, and it changed my life. I can only hope Emily uses this time to learn and come back stronger." Laura greeted Emily with a warm smile, her tone reassuring. "It's good to have you back. Daniel is here today. He'd like to speak with you." At the mention of Daniel, Emily's stomach tightened, a wave of nerves crashing over her. Despite rehearsing her apology countless times, the thought of facing him in person filled her with unease. Straightening her shoulders, she took a steadying breath and nodded. "Thank you, Laura. I'll go see him now." Daniel was seated at a corner table, focused intently on a stack of documents. When he looked up and saw Emily approaching, he set the papers aside and stood, his expression unreadable. Emily took a deep breath, acutely aware of her trembling hands. Her voice was soft, but resolute as she began. "Mr. Everett, I want to apologize for the way I treated you. I let my personal feelings interfere with my job, and that was wrong. I'm truly sorry." Daniel regarded her for a moment, his gaze softening slightly. "Thank you for saying that, Emily," he replied evenly, his voice calm and measured. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." A faint sense of relief washed over Emily, though she knew this wasn't the end. "Over the past 2 weeks, I've thought a lot about what happened," she continued. "I realized I didn't just let you down. I let down my colleagues and myself. I hope to regain your trust." And Daniel gestured for Emily to take the seat across from him. She complied, though the tension remained evident in her posture. "I'm not here to punish you, Emily," Daniel began, his tone steady but firm. "I'm here to help you learn." Leaning forward, his gaze grew more intense. "In this industry, we serve people from all walks of life. You don't have to agree with their views, but you must treat them with respect. This isn't just a rule. It's a principle. It's what makes this place special." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. "I understand that now," she said, her voice low but determined. "I let my biases cloud my judgment, and I deeply regret it." Daniel offered a faint smile. "Good, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what we do afterward. Are you ready to prove that you've learned from this?" "Yes," Emily replied, her voice steady. "I'm ready." Emily returned to work with a newfound determination. She knew she had to demonstrate that she had changed, not just to Daniel, but also to herself and her colleagues. The first days were anything but easy. Some coworkers kept their distance, their guarded expressions revealing lingering doubts. But Emily didn't let that discourage her. She worked harder than ever, proactively offering help and ensuring every customer received the best service possible. At first, Laura, who had harbored skepticism about Emily's ability to change, began to notice the difference. "You did well today," Laura said one afternoon. "I can see you're really trying." Emily smiled, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Laura. I'm doing my best to make things right." As time passed, Emily's perception of Daniel began to shift. Initially, she had seen him only as a symbol of an ideology she opposed, but as she observed how he treated his employees and customers, she began to see the person behind the hat, a dedicated leader who genuinely cared about everyone in his restaurant. One evening, as the staff tidied up at the end of the day, Emily approached Danielle. "I just wanted to thank you for giving me a second chance," she said sincerely. "It means a lot to me." Daniel nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Second chances are how we grow," he said. "You made a mistake, Emily. We all do, but what matters is your willingness to do better." As Emily walked away, she felt a sense of relief and closure she hadn't anticipated. She had been given an opportunity to learn and grow, and she was determined not to waste it. This story reminds us of the importance of humility, empathy, and the power of second chances. If you were in Emily's shoes, how would you handle such a situation? Have you ever experienced a moment that challenged your beliefs or gave you a chance to grow? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might inspire others to see things from a new perspective. If you found the story meaningful, don't hesitate to share it with your friends and family to spread the message of understanding and personal growth. Thank you for watching and supporting our channel. Together, we can take small but impactful steps toward building a world where respect and kindness guide our actions. Wishing you joy and success always. Thank you so much for your continued support of the channel. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. During the content creation process, there may have been some small mistakes, and we hope you'll kindly overlook them. Wishing everyone happiness, peace, and good health in life. Stay tuned for more.